I'm here with Kelly. We're gonna test the Sony RX100 Mark V versus the new Google Pixel XL on this night scene, and we'll find out what does better in terms of video and stills. The Sony RX is a great compact camera, 1-inch sensor. The Google is 1 over 2.55-inch sensor, much smaller, but it's using software to compensate. So we'll find out which one does better. Sony has multiple modes, so we're going to be testing that. All right, so for our first test, we're going to put the camera into auto mode right here, and we're going to take a picture. I'm focusing on the brightest part of the building. It's detecting that it's a night mode. We're going to take a photo, click on more. Now we're going to try some different settings on this. We're going to go to menu, we're going to go to SCN, and we're going to select the correct mode for this, which is, if you look in the camera, alright, so we're going to do handheld twilight, which is kind of what we're seeing now. We're going to take one more. So it's doing what the Pixel does automatically. So we're gonna take one more. All right. And now let's put it into manual mode, because that's why you have a professional camera. We're gonna put the f-stop at 0.8, put the ISO on auto, and remember the camera also has its own HDR mode, so we're gonna see how this does at night. So it's pretty blown out. We're gonna try one more setting, because we're gonna try to make this happen as nice as possible. So we're gonna go to function, ISO. We're gonna lower it down so we have a live preview to something kind of reasonable. So we're gonna go 320, and our shutter is 1 over 40. Let's see how that works. We're going to make the shutter a little less, 1 over 30. You don't want to go too low, or the handheld shake will interfere with problems. Wait for that stupid car to go by. Alright, focusing. Click. Alright, looks a lot better. Let's lower the ISO a little bit more, see if we can pump out a little more juice from this. And, alright. So now we're at ISO 100. It's getting quite dark. Handheld 1 over 30. Alright, it's an HDR mode. We're going to take that off just for comparison, and we're going to go to function, take off the HDR. It's going to look really dark, but alright. We're also shooting in RAW, so we're going to look at now we're going to look at the Pixel, which claims to have the best video. So we're going to just do a regular photo. Click, then we're going to go to more, and oops, you didn't see that. Alright, more, Nightsight. Alright, now it's going to do 3 seconds for a photo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, and we'll do one more, and I'm going to focus on the brightest part of the building for this, just to give it a different exposure level. Here we go. One more time. 3, 2, 1. Alright, we're going to go back to Lightroom and see how these photos turned out. So let's review our pictures. So we have our auto pictures, which look blown out, and I wouldn't recommend unless you don't know how to adjust settings. So then we're going to look at the twilight photos. So the ISO is 3200, and compared to this twilight, so it looks like the twilight controls for the highlights a little bit better. And here's the River City sign. You can't see the word bar. Alright, so we'll look at another twilight photo. Can't see the word bar, but it does help with the highlights, and this is still blown out. Let's look at so then we just put it into this, what mode was that? I don't know. But we put it on manual, auto, ISO, and pixel really high ISO. It looks kind of great from the distance, but when you want any detail, it becomes very grainy and doesn't capture a lot of the dynamic range area. So when I had to manually adjust it to 1/40, it starts looking like a nicer photo, that better for editing. I finally get the word bar. This still looks grainy. The only way to reduce graininess is to lower the ISO, so we took one with 130 to capture more light. We're starting to capture the sign in the background. Not bad. Still can't read it. This is Budweiser, can't read that. The only way to capture something that far, this is with HDR. And now I can see the frozen custard. This is HDR with ISO 100. So it doesn't, it's very dark. I can kind of start seeing the Budweiser sign. And when I took off HDR, which is supposed to make a nicer photo, I can almost read the year on this. So let's compare that to, this is with HDR. So the HDR mode on the Sony is fairly nice. And that there's two types. I use the DRO ISO, not the regular one. You can see the word bar, Indian grocery, and the hardest thing to capture is this Budweiser. So the HDR mode makes the photo look nicer overall, but it doesn't make this Budweiser sign any better. Let's just zoom in on that. Here, it's with no HDR. Oops. Bring it over. So with no HDR, it looks a little bit more crisp, but I mean, really, you're getting that close to that. So let's look at the Pixel, which Nightsight regular mode looks already. Regular mode looks better than the Sony Auto mode. A lot of highlights. The Nightsight first Nightsight mode has these highlights, but when I manually told it to focus on this, then it starts capturing these details, and the open sign isn't as good. So the hardest thing was this Budweiser sign, I think, and it captures the outline. I think it's just limited by it's just a smaller sensor. But if you look at something closer, this River City sign is pretty good. And to compare all three, probably the best three parts of the photo would be, that's most useful to know, would be right here, this little detail area. So if you look at these three photos, the Sony does the better job of capturing the sign, but look at the overall photo, like which one we're going to post on Facebook, the Pixel, the Sony, or the other Sony one. And obviously it's the Pixel, but with a little Lightroom you could probably fix this up. So if you know how to use your camera, the Sony is a little better. If you are in a hurry, probably not. We're going to look at some party we went to and see who does the better photo. So now I went to a party and we're going to see what photos look nicer. This is from the Google Pixel, and I just want to show you a few things. So this is every photo here was with Nightsight, and you can see it kind of creates an overall nice picture. Captures faces, uses dynamic range. Sometimes it changes the color profile, but it's nothing you can't, from warmer to cooler, but all of them look fairly nice. And I can't say there's one bad picture. The only time it didn't turn out well was if there was too much movement. And when I was in a hurry, this clearly was the better photo and it captured the moment. Now, after looking at the Sony RX, I played with multiple different settings. The highest ISO I used was 6400 and it just blows it out, loses detail. The second highest ISO was 2500 and still kind of makes it feel dark and gloomy and depressing, doesn't have that warm feeling. I did try 6400 with different shutter speeds, so when I went from 1/30 to 1/25, made it a little brighter. The word party you can't see, And if you look at the Pixel, you will be able to see that word, and it looks really nice. And the AI takes out a lot of the grain that is associated with ISO. Like these ISO values for the Pixel, it's probably, I mean, they're such weird numbers. It doesn't really matter. They're just taking multiple photos, and through AI, they're picking what looks the best. So I can't say the Sony actually had a great, none of them were bad, but just they were, none of them were great. And remember, I like detail, so I'm a little disappointed that, you know, this like Sony is almost $1,000 and doesn't do as well. So the ISO 400 probably is your best bet if you are in a party and you capture a fair amount of detail. If you zoom in on the party, you capture it pretty well. Let's look at another ISO 400. And some of these were with HDR, some of these weren't. But remember, HDR takes a little bit of quality away, but it creates an overall better impression. So like you see this little like weird blur. This is from the HDR trying to work. So it's just, it's a harder, the HDR is much better done on the Pixel. This little text here, you can see the R here, and the detail of the wood with ISO 400. ISO 800, it's a little brighter, and ISO 800 on 113 looks nice in terms of, is also a nice settings, but the party is still nicer on the Pixel. If you look at that same photo on the Pixel, side by side, let's look at that sign. Here we go. What do you think looks better, Pixel party or Sony party? I'd rather be at the Pixel party. In terms of detail, there's some tricky parts like the light behind the cup, and the Pixel makes the edges look smoother as opposed to the Sony, and the Sony looks like it just is not as nice, even though it has more megapixels. I'm not sure if you can't capture detail, what's the point of having a higher camera? And look, then this is blown out. So let's go to ISO 400 again. See what does the best. 1/20, 1/30. 1/30 is a good compromise to prevent like too much motion blur. You get some wood, but it just looks dark. And then now you have to blow it out. Let's look over 1/25. Looks a little. This is probably your best setting, but you're going to be guessing a lot. Like you can see the R, some good quality, and I think I'll find you a similar Pixel one right here. Pixel can't see it, but on other ones I could. Here we go. So you can see the R, and which one looks better to you, the Pixel or the Sony? It looks like the Pixel looks like it's ready for Facebook. This is not. So let's look at, and the wood texture is much better on the Sony ISO 400. This video right now is the Pixel video, and the audio is from the Pixel. Most of the, you can see, you can kind of adjust. We're going to compare these on a nicer settings. Alright, look at that. If we click on the building, it dims it. We're going to move around. What do you guys think? It's a little shaky, the video. And there's the car. You can we zoom? Yes, we can. How does the sign look? River City. Alright. And we cannot see this sign right here. Alright. And yeah. Doing the same scene on the same street. Now we're gonna test the Sony zoom versus the Pixel, which only has digital zoom, and we get fairly decent quality. I think this is 1080p quality, and we can't get any closer, but we're gonna compare these up close. This is on auto. And now we zoom out, the f-stop will return to 1.8, and we'll see which camera is better. So my summary is that the Pixel is probably best for parties and overall low light situations, if you think there's some detail you need to capture, go with the Sony, but the differences are probably not small enough to make a difference. Let me know if you guys want some more tests, or maybe we can do a selfie. What does the best selfie in low light situations? There's still more testing to do. So thanks for watching, and like and subscribe.